to do it. Well, for the first time, we're live on the internet. So, I don't know what a meaning that day is to Seventh-day Adventists, because on Thursday it was 176 years to Jesus to come. And that morning arrived during that day, and when they went, it was the saddest day of their entire life, because people accuse Seventh-day Adventists of being false prophets, but it really shows they don't know what they're talking about. Because if you had asked the disciples what was going to be the outcome, but instead he was crucified, and they were totally discouraged about it. All history. That was on October 22, 1844, that happened. Now, 8 verse 14 says, "Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed." Now, all the Protestant church, and so they assumed that it meant Jesus was coming to this earth to purify the earth. And also Daniel 9:25, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment," that command to restore Jerusalem was in the Bible, and that it took place in 457 BC. The 2,300 days would be at first they thought it was 1843, because they didn't remember or realize that there was a 0, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then they started again with 1. So there was no 0 year to make the math work between the two, 1844, and they were able to figure the exact date of October 22. And the message they preached, they found in Revelation 14, verse 7, the hour of his judgment, his executive judgment, or the delivery of the judgment, of how the judgment has turned out, they just thought that's what was being predicted. But listen first, before we go to court. And so that has been called the investigative judgment, and happens before. I'd like to spend a few minutes on the kind of man that God chose. In the book Great Controversy, page 317, it says, "His mind was active, and though he did not enjoy the advantages of a collegiate education, rendered him a man of sound judgment and comprehensive views." So, and a lot of people felt the same as some do today. If you don't have a college degree or a university degree, then what good are you, or how could you possibly know? But you know, as you study Bible prophecy, most of the time he picked was, willing to study hard. He was willing to do his best. And of course, at first he wasn't studying. So in the same book, page 319, this is William Miller speaking himself. "I saw that and I was perplexed to find how an uninspired book should develop principles so perfectly adapted to the wants of a fallen world." So he had listened to other people who claimed the Bible wasn't inspired, and he had adopted that must be a revelation from God. "They became my delight, and in Jesus I found a friend. The Savior became to me the chiefest." Feel like he is the chief, or do you feel that he is the chiefest among 10,000, the one that you most long to learn about, and the others who were the same. Then it says, the Bible now became my chief study, and I can truly say for other reading, and applied my heart to get wisdom from God. Now we're going to have to change it a little bit because people don't read much anymore, except they read from the internet. What about laying aside the internet and laying aside the might occur, just like happened to William Miller? This is how I believe the enemy, and I'm not saying we should never get any benefit from these tools or magazines, but this is what is the barrier to getting people that get like William Miller so that God can really this world again. And so once endeavoring to lay aside all preconceived opinions, that's the thing that's hard for people. And the professors, the theology professors. And that's probably why God picked a lay person. I'm going to study the Bible with an open mind. I'm not going to try to interpret the Bible according to my preconceived ideas. Endeavoring to lay aside all preconceived opinions and dispensing with commentaries. So he didn't even want to use by the aid of the marginal references in the concordance. He pursued his study in a regular and methodical manner, beginning with this and reading verse by verse. He proceeded no placement. So he could explain it to anybody, any verse that he passed by, he wanted to be able to explain it to anyone. Whenever he met with a passage hard to be understood, he found an explanation in some other portion. Well, look in other places, it will explain what it means. Well, he really got tested when he came to the book of Daniel, but by then, his method had been very well learned. And the story occurred after he had been a lecturer in many, many cities, and he was looked upon as an incredible speaker, and one day he was not there. And so they thought, well, at least I would like to see his library. And they were envisioning this vast library of Miller, escorted the visitor into the library. And the only books in the library was the Bible and Cruden's Concordance. Nothing else. And they were shocked. By time studying the Bible, and they spend their time studying what men have said about the Bible, and this is the result why there's so many confused ideas in regard to what the Bible teaches today. But God chose, at least in many, many ways, which other people did not. In Daniel 12, verse 4, it says, "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and say," we're giving on Friday nights down in our city center. But God said, seal it up, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Now that phrase has been misunderstood by an awful lot of people. It's not talking about airplanes and in regard to the book of Daniel, and in regard to the last days, about. And so they would study the Bible like Miller. They'd read in Genesis, they'd read in Jeremiah, they'd read in Revelation. They would be. Also later in the chapter it says, "Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end." So he said, Daniel, I'm sorry, I'm not going to explain it all to you, but someday, in the end, well, Miller was the man chosen to be used of God to open the book of Daniel to the world. Another text, 2 and 3. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. It needs to be plain upon tables because the person that reads it is supposed to understand it and be able to run. Well, there's no time when that text fit better than to the book of Daniel. And so, a particular book of Daniel would be understood at the appointed time. And definitely it was. As I mentioned, the verses 6 and 7. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven. Now, it's not a literal angel here, but it's talking about a message, and it is supposed to fly, not crawl. It hasn't been flying. That's the problem. But it was flying during the Millerite movement. Less than 30 years. This message went to every single Christian on planet Earth. And I don't know, I don't think it made its way to, and everyone knew, and every Christian had to make a decision. What tells what the message was, having the everlasting gospel to preach gospel. But I am sure the most exciting one is the second coming. You soon will. So that is a wonderful message, and it's to go to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and the sea and the fountains of waters. That's a direct quote from the fourth commandment. And, pastors of many churches are saying there is no command. They're saying. But they're speaking from a vast background of ignorance. Because here is a direct command that it's time for God's people to return to the keeping of the fourth commandment. As I said, the Millerites didn't grasp what was being delivered. Now here, in a book by one of our pioneers, Elder Loughborough, he wrote a book called the Second, well, it'll come here in a minute. He said, the proclamation by the Felix. Here's a quote, what Paul said, righteousness, temperance, and judgment to come. So Paul spoke to Felix about judgment. Nor was it the statement made by Martin Luther after having to have said, he is reported to have said, quote, I am persuaded that the 100 years longer. Interesting, he wasn't too far off. Neither was it the statement made by John Wesley when he said, he, and quote again, thought the millennium might commence in about 100 years. The Adventist doesn't say will come, might come, or any of that, is come. And the cry of Revelation 10:6, time shall be no longer. In other words, after 1844, time shall be no longer. Such a prophecy could not be accomplished by an announcement of an event that was just such a message with just such definiteness as that demanded by the above prophecies. That which gave force to the message and most mightily moved the people was the proclamation of definite time. I suppose that cured all the procrastination of a definite time. And so no procrastinator will get ready. If we put it off, we just won't get ready. But if we believe that Jesus is coming very soon, then we're going to get busy getting ready. Now, the Lord put his stamp of approval on them, not just because they could defend their positions from the Bible, but because of his testimony from heaven. And this is some of what happened is in Revelation 6, verses 12 to 14. And I beheld, the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll. Now that is the second coming of them. To know that the end is near is predicted in the Bible. And you can find them in a number of sources, but there was the Lisbon earthquake that took place in 1755. Now that was before Miller was preaching, but in those days when Miller was preaching, everybody knew about that tremendous, in May 19, 1780, which again was a warning that Jesus' coming is very near. And the third one, the falling of stars, took place right during, and then they had another amazing support from heaven that they were on the right track. In Revelation 9, we don't have time to study that chapter, Muslims would be in control. And therefore it predicted the actual day that they would fall from power. And one of the Millerite preachers, in studying that chapter, discovered it's going to happen on August 11, 1840. Signs to tell people, you better listen to the Millerites. They've got it straight. And yet many people did not. Now, many of you have heard of all those. Happened on January 25, 1837. There was a most magnificent display of the fiery aurora borealis, which the following description of the scene is from the New York Commercial Advisor of October 22, 1839. Here's a quote. Same phenomena, meaning the aurora borealis, in various parts of the country. As our readers will be fearful in a most unprecedented manner. In one place situated near a mountain, rolling down the mountain, and generally, so far as learned, the snow covering the ground appeared like fire mingled with blood. Says is going to happen, and they saw it happen. Resembled as much the prophetic description of the last day that many were amazed. The children beholding it were affrighted with much manifest alarm. So here's another sign that God gave, and people got the message. You know, that's one of the key points to me, is they got the message. Jesus, some may scoff, but many people, they get the point, because God does it in such a way that they can't miss it. Here's another one that happened in London on September 5, 1839. Between the hours was observed one of the most magnificent specimens of these extraordinary phenomena. The falling stars and northern lights witnessed for many years past. The first indication of this singular phenomenon was 10 minutes before 10, when a light into the center of the heavens. And by 10 o'clock or quarter past, the whole from east to west was one vast and was exactly like that occasioned by a terrific fire. The light varied considerable. At one time it seemed to fall, and directly after volumes of smoke, which rolled over and over, and every beholder seemed convinced. The consternation of the metropolis was very great. Thousands of persons were running in the direction of the supposed awful catastrophe. The engines belonging to the fire brigade stations in Baker Street, Farthington Street, Watling Street, Waterloo Road. These appearances came together. And thou must prophesy again. And the book of Daniel, it's not a very big again, because although we can't predict any definite come, it is to get with it and to give this message. He's going to give more signs and evidences that this is his message for this hour. In their time, and this time, we won't be disappointed because we have a better grasp for us. And he a city center, that we have a Bible worker, and you know, a Bible worker can't do it all. We've got to have, pretty soon he's going to get more Bible studies than what he can do. And so we need more people that will join us to give Bible studies.
We put live, we need to tap.
Sometimes I repeat some things because it's different traits that I heard with
I think the live already.
When you have a box like that, the only thing they see is what's inside the box.
You can indicate zoom in as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me see.
doesn't have to be a story about something, it could be another thing. Or even something about nature. So, anyway. No, they're in South Central and South America. The Spanish, they spend all day doing something in church. They have in church, and they have, and then they have AY or something like that. And then they have a evening service or something all day long. Yeah, I don't know, you probably never talked to Kelly. She's around, but she's not coming to church here right now, because she's
Tapos nalibig ko ang
Mary Graham wants to put her name and then Cindy put his name.
Okay.
That's why.
Deixa, filho.
Tapos nalibig agora.
Não, tô ocupado, filho. Tô usando o telefone.
But she goes places. But she's been going to different places. And she said they went up on,
Fast.
look out now.
Yeah.
You know, fast food.
It's different.
Yeah, because there is a delay.
For they shall be filled.
There is a delay. It's normal. But now it's not stopped. The problem when I was watching you was going on, suddenly stopping and start to load, and start going on. After 1 minute, stop again, start going on. But now it's
Okay.
so now this device is connected to the wireless.
Now suppose I'm down at the center and I need it to connect or record. Does it also record on my device?
Yeah, no problem. I think we can test now.
Yeah.
You want to test? We can test. I think it will not be a problem. We can test. Because now, look.
Now, first of all, start at the beginning and
Oh, you
show
are
me the
connected.
steps.
Yeah, you are connected to the New England Wi-Fi.
Okay, so that needs to be in place.
Yeah.
Then
We can stop now. Let's stop.